The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It dripped lazily from the rusted gutters of our family's lake house, the same place we'd spent nearly every summer growing up, though it felt different now. Different in a way I couldn't name yet. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of wet wood and something older, something left behind from years when we were just kids, chasing each other barefoot through the hallways. The fireplace was dead cold. The lights flickered whenever the wind hit just right. It was just the two of us this weekend. Me and Noah. My twin. My mirror. My opposite in ways I couldn't explain anymore, not even to myself. He had always been the reckless one. The one who jumped into the deep end, the one who laughed at rules, the one who somehow got away with everything. I was the quieter one, the planner, the one who worried. But being around Noah always peeled something raw open inside me. Like a version of myself I wasn't supposed to want but secretly did. He sprawled lazily on the couch now, flipping through an old photo album we found buried in the living room closet. His fingers, long and careless, trailed over pictures of us as toddlers, teenagers, almost men. His hoodie was half off his shoulder, revealing the sharp edge of his collarbone. I caught myself staring too long. "Finn, you remember this one?" Noah said, his voice low, almost amused. He held up a photo of us in the lake, wrestling in the water, laughing like idiots. I nodded, unable to trust my own voice. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. A branch scraped against the window pane like nails. I tried not to jump. "I can't believe we used to be that close," Noah said, softer this time. Something almost wistful in it. Regret? Longing? I didn't know how to answer. A weird tightness crawled into the room then, curling under my skin. I shifted in my seat, pretending to adjust the blanket across my lap. Outside, the sky was a flat sheet of gray, pressed down so close it felt like we might be swallowed by it. No cell signal. No neighbors for miles. Only the water, the trees, and whatever it was that had been quietly changing between us over the years. Noah turned another page. Another picture, the two of us sleeping in the same bed after a nightmare. I remembered that night. I remembered how I had clung to him in the dark, too old to admit how scared I was. I remembered how he didn't let go. Even now, the memory burned through me with a strange, aching heat I couldn't explain. Or maybe didn't want to. "You ever miss it?" Noah asked suddenly, eyes not meeting mine. "Miss what?" I managed to croak out, throat dry. He shrugged, looking so casual, but I could see the way his jaw tensed, the way his knuckles whitened around the edge of the photo album. "Before everything got complicated," he said. The words hung there, thick and accusing, like smoke in the stale cabin air. A shiver ran through me, not from the cold. From something worse. From the part of me that wanted to ask, complicated how? But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Because some part of me already knew the answer. And it scared the hell out of me. The hours dragged in that way they only do when you're stuck somewhere with too many memories and not enough distractions. We spent the afternoon moving through old closets, poking through trunks of clothes that smelled like mothballs and dampness. Every once in a while, I'd catch Noah watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, a glance too long, a smirk a little too loaded. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself a lot of things. By late afternoon, the rain had turned to mist, clinging to the windows in soft, ghostly streaks. The lake was hidden behind a curtain of gray, the trees bending low under the weight of it. Noah stretched out on the living room floor, arms folded under his head, staring up at the sagging ceiling beams like he could see something I couldn't. His shirt had ridden up slightly, exposing a strip of his stomach, pale and smooth. I swallowed hard and looked away, feeling like a pervert in my own skin. "You ever wonder what it would have been like if we stayed here?" he asked lazily, voice muffled by the carpet. "Stayed here, forever?" I teased, but my voice cracked at the end, betraying me. He didn't answer right away. Just smiled a little, crooked and unreadable. There was a long silence after that. The kind that wasn't exactly comfortable but wasn't quite uncomfortable either. Just charged. I busied myself in the kitchen, making something half-hearted for dinner, canned soup, old crackers I found buried in the pantry. The stove hissed and clicked before finally lighting, casting a dim orange glow that barely touched the gloom pressing in from the windows. While I stirred the pot, I heard it. A soft thud upstairs. I froze, the spoon slipping from my fingers and clattering against the counter. I strained to listen, heart suddenly pounding in my ears. Noah didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he was pretending not to. Probably just the house settling, he said, without looking at me. But something in his tone made my skin prickle. Yeah, I said, forcing a laugh. Old houses do that. But the sound didn't come again. Only the distant whisper of rain and the uneven breathing of the fire as it struggled to stay alive. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where every clink of the spoon against the bowl feels unbearably loud. Noah kept glancing at me under his lashes, like he was waiting for me to say something, to do something. I didn't. I couldn't. Later, we found ourselves upstairs, poking around the attic. The floorboards groaned under our weight as we shifted boxes and old furniture. Dust floated in the air, catching the weak light from a single dangling bulb. The smell was overwhelming, mildew, old paper, the ghost of 1,000 forgotten summers. We found a box labeled private. Of course, Noah ripped it open like a kid on Christmas. Inside were journals. Dozens of them. Our mother's, from when she was our age. Pages and pages of cramped handwriting. Secrets spilled across yellowed paper. Noah flipped through them, laughing at the old-fashioned phrases, the dramatic heartbreaks. Then he found one entry that made him go still. "What is it?" I asked, moving closer. He didn't answer. Just handed it to me. The entry was dated the summer before she disappeared. The summer everything changed. "There's something wrong with them," she had written. Something unnatural. Something that shouldn't be. I stared at the words, my mouth dry. "She was talking about us," Noah said, his voice strangely calm. "She was paranoid," I said quickly. "She was sick." "Wasn't she?" Noah laughed, a hollow, broken sound. He closed the journal, tossed it aside. We didn't talk after that. Not for a long time. The house seemed to close in around us, the walls too narrow, the air too thin. I felt him behind me, the heat of his body, the tension radiating off him like a second skin. I wanted to move. I didn't. When I finally turned, he was standing too close. His eyes darker than the storm outside. "You ever think maybe she was right?" Noah whispered. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. "What are you talking about?" I said, but my voice was barely there. He leaned in, and for a second, I thought he was going to say something else, something terrible. Instead, he just smiled that slow, dangerous smile he always had when we were kids about to do something we knew we shouldn't. "Nothing," he said. "Forget it." But I couldn't. Because the way he was looking at me, like he was seeing something he wasn't supposed to want, was the same way I was looking at him. And we both knew it. The floor creaked behind us suddenly, and we both jumped. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Only shadows. When I turned back, Noah was gone. Gone, just like that. The attic felt colder without him. Emptier. Or maybe it was just me, hollowed out by something I didn't have a name for. I found him in the boathouse. The door was hanging open, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, the air was damp and sharp with the smell of lake water and old rope. It was dark except for the thin sliver of twilight sneaking in through a broken window. Noah was sitting on the edge of the old canoe, head bowed, hands clasped between his knees. He didn't look up when I entered. I stood there, just inside the doorway, the wood creaking under my weight. I could hear my own heartbeat, louder than the rain, louder than the wind. He finally spoke. "You ever feel like you're wrong?" His voice cracked in the middle, raw and too honest. Like something in you got twisted and you can't untangle it no matter how hard you try? I didn't know how to answer. Or maybe I did. And that was the worst part. I stepped closer. Carefully. Like if I moved too fast, the whole thing would shatter. Noah lifted his head. His eyes gleamed in the low light, shining wet. His face was open in a way I had never seen before. Not when we were kids, not even when we whispered secrets under the covers at night. "I hate this," he said, voice low and vicious. "I hate that I—" He broke off, biting down hard on the words. I knew what he wasn't saying. I knew because I felt it too. The sick, aching want that no amount of distance or denial could kill. I should have walked away. I should have said something to break the moment. Instead, I crossed the room in 3 steps. We stared at each other, breathing hard, the space between us charged and trembling. I could see the pulse hammering in his throat. His hands were fists now, knuckles white. "Don't," he said, but it sounded more like a dare than a warning. "I'm not doing anything," I whispered back. A lie so thin it almost dissolved in the air. Another step. Close enough to feel the heat rolling off his body. Close enough to smell the salt of his skin. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world outside shrank away, the rain, the wind, the ruined old house, until there was only this. Only us. His hand twitched at his side. I thought he might push me away. I thought he might hit me. Instead, he grabbed the front of my shirt and pulled me in. The kiss wasn't soft. It was desperate. Messy. Bruising. All teeth and salt and guilt. I gasped into his mouth, fists tangling in his hoodie, pulling him closer, closer, like I could crawl inside his skin and hide there. He kissed me like he was angry. Like he hated me. Like he hated himself. And maybe he did. Maybe I did too. But none of it mattered in that moment. Because whatever this thing was, ugly and wrong and forbidden, it had always been there, buried under years of pretending. Now it was out. Now it was too big to shove back down. Noah pushed me back against the wall, his hands everywhere and nowhere, trembling with the force of whatever we'd unleashed. I wanted to speak, to say stop or wait or what are we doing, but the words stuck in my throat, drowned by the tidal wave of everything I had tried so hard to deny. He pulled away first. Breathing hard, eyes wild, chest heaving. We stared at each other like strangers. Like enemies. The moment stretched between us, sharp and thin as glass. Then he wiped the back of his hand across his mouth, a savage, shaking gesture, and turned away. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The rain lashed harder against the roof. The shadows lengthened. Without a word, Noah shoved past me and disappeared into the storm, the door slamming so hard behind him that the entire boathouse seemed to shudder. I stood there for a long time, tasting blood and salt on my lips, feeling the echo of him in every nerve ending. Broken. Twisted. Utterly alone. Somewhere deep inside me, a tiny voice whispered, "You can't come back from this." And maybe it was right. The rain swallowed him. I stood frozen in the boathouse doorway, the storm stinging my skin like a punishment. The lake churned under the bruised sky, and the trees thrashed against each other like they wanted to tear themselves apart. Noah's shadow had already vanished into the gray. I thought about going after him. I even stepped out into the rain, boots sinking into the muddy ground, hands trembling at my sides. But what could I say? Come back? It's okay? Let's pretend it didn't happen? None of those were true. None of them would ever be true again. I sank onto the edge of the boathouse steps, arms wrapped tight around myself. The cold seeped into my bones, but I barely noticed. Instead, all I could feel was the ghost of his mouth against mine. The bruising grip of his hands. The way he had looked at me, like he was drowning and I was the rope pulling him under. I didn't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the rain to soak me through, turning my clothes heavy and clingy against my skin. Long enough for my fingers to go numb. The sky darkened into night without fanfare. And still, no sign of him. By the time I stumbled back inside the house, I was shivering so hard my teeth rattled. The living room was empty. The fireplace cold. Noah's boots were still by the door. His jacket too. He hadn't run away. Not completely. I peeled off my wet clothes and threw them in a heap by the front door. Pulled on an old hoodie I found hanging on the stair rail, probably his. It smelled like him. Like rain and something sharper underneath. I climbed the stairs on autopilot, heart pounding with every creak of the steps. At the end of the hallway, Noah's bedroom door was cracked open. The faint glow of a lamp spilled out, buttery yellow against the darkness. I stood there for a moment, fist hovering in the air, not sure if I was knocking to be polite or to warn him. I pushed the door open. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. His hair was plastered to his forehead, still damp, his shoulders heaving like he couldn't quite catch his breath. I stepped inside. The floor felt unstable, like the house itself was holding its breath. Noah didn't look up, didn't speak. I sat down beside him, careful not to touch. Not yet. The silence between us was alive, breathing, too big for the room. "I'm sorry," I said finally, my voice barely audible. Noah flinched, like the words had struck him. He dragged his hands down his face, scrubbing hard like he could erase everything that had happened. "I'm not," he said hoarsely. I turned toward him, but he still wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared down at his hands instead, at the fine tremor running through them. "I've been fighting it for so long," he said. "Pretending it was just me. Pretending you didn't." He shook his head violently. "I thought if I stayed away long enough, it would go away." He finally looked at me then. Unmasked. But it didn't. My heart thundered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I opened my mouth, to agree, to deny, to beg him not to say another word, but nothing came out. The distance between us was a razor blade. One step closer and we would bleed for it. "I don't know what we're supposed to do," I whispered. Noah laughed, broken and hollow. "Maybe there's nothing we can do." For a heartbeat, it felt like he might lean in again. Might kiss me again. Might shatter us both completely. I didn't know whether I would stop him. But then he turned away. Shoulders shaking, fists clenched in the blankets. And just like that, the moment broke, fragile as glass hitting the floor. I stood up, the floor groaning under my weight. Noah didn't move. Didn't say a word. I left the room without looking back. Behind me, the door swung gently on its hinges, creaking like a whisper. Like a secret we couldn't bury anymore. The next morning, the world looked different. Paler. Colder. As if the storm had scraped the color out of everything. The cabin was silent except for the occasional groan of the old pipes and the soft tick of the kitchen clock. Time dragging itself forward, pretending things could somehow go back to normal. I sat at the table, nursing a mug of cold coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. Staring out the window. Waiting. Noah came downstairs eventually. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate. Like every movement cost him something. He didn't look at me. Didn't say a word. He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, shrugged it on with jerky, angry movements. His face was pale, his mouth set in a hard, thin line. I opened my mouth to say something. "Please stay, please talk to me, please don't pretend last night didn't happen," but the words caught in my throat and burned there. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. For a second I thought he might turn around. Might face me. Might give me something to hold on to. But he didn't. He just said, without looking back, "I'll be back later." And then he was gone. The door slammed behind him, shaking the walls. I stared at the empty space where he'd stood. At the muddy footprints he left across the warped wood floor. At the place where everything between us had broken, so violently and completely it felt like a physical thing, like a wound I couldn't stop picking at. I told myself I should be relieved, that the space he left behind was safer, cleaner. But it wasn't. It was unbearable. And the worst part? The part that twisted low in my gut and refused to let go? I didn't want him to stay away. I didn't want to fix it. I wanted it to break even more. I wanted to fall apart with him. Outside, the clouds were gathering again, bruised and heavy against the pale sky. The lake was a flat, silver mirror. Waiting. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window, closing my eyes. Somewhere out there, Noah was walking into the storm. And I knew, with a sick certainty I couldn't deny, that he would come back. And when he did, we would both make the wrong choice again. Because some things, once opened, can never be closed. Some lines, once crossed, erase themselves completely. The cabin groaned around me, old and tired, as if it knew exactly what was coming. I stayed there at the window for a long time. Waiting. Shivering. Wanting. It started with the rain. Not the heavy, angry kind you brace against. This rain was soft, endless, tapping against the windows like a secret trying to get in. We hadn't been back to the cabin in years. The place looked smaller than I remembered, the wood siding grayer, sagging with age. The front porch slanted just enough to make the whole house seem like it was bowing under a weight only it could feel. Noah dropped his duffel bag by the door with a grunt. "I can't believe this place is still standing," he said, kicking his boots off. I laughed too loudly. "Yeah, barely." We didn't say what we were both thinking. About the last summer we spent here. About how everything had changed after that. The living room smelled like dust and old firewood. The same ugly floral couch stood against the wall, sagging deeper than it had back then. I traced a finger along the edge of the fireplace, feeling the rough stone, the grit gathering under my nails. Noah was already sprawled out across the couch, flipping through the channels of the tiny, battered TV we found half working in the corner. His shirt clung to his back, damp from the mist outside. I tried not to stare. "You're quiet," Noah said, glancing at me sideways, a little smile tugging at his mouth. "Forgotten how to talk to me?" I shook my head, my throat dry. "No. Just tired, I guess." He didn't push it. Noah never pushed unless he already knew he would win. The sky outside was sinking into a deeper gray, the rain growing heavier now, blurring the trees into shadowy shapes. Somewhere in the house, the old pipes groaned, a long, shuddering sound that made the hair on the back of my neck lift. "It's just the house settling," I said out loud, maybe to Noah, maybe just to myself. But Noah wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring out the window, his jaw tight, his fingers tapping an anxious rhythm against his thigh. For a moment, he looked almost afraid. I opened my mouth to ask what was wrong, but something in his posture, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists, stopped me cold. Instead, I followed his gaze. Into the trees. Into the mist. And for a heartbeat, I thought I saw something moving out there. Something too big, too fast to be the wind. But when I blinked, it was gone. Swallowed by the rain. Noah caught me watching him and smiled. That slow, crooked smile he used to get when we were kids about to do something we knew we shouldn't. "We're fine," he said. But something in his voice made my stomach twist. Something told me that whatever had been waiting for us all these years hadn't forgotten. And it was still here. Waiting. The lake was so still it looked fake, a sheet of dark glass stretching out beyond the trees. The air smelled like wet leaves and something colder underneath, something metallic and sharp that didn't belong. I shifted the heavy duffel bag higher on my shoulder, watching the old cabin appear through the mist like a ghost. Beside me, Noah whistled low under his breath. "Looks smaller than I remember," he said, brushing wet hair off his forehead. Or maybe we had just gotten bigger. Or maybe something inside the house had stayed the same while we grew into people we didn't recognize anymore. The porch groaned under our weight as we stepped onto it, the boards sagging slightly, like the house itself was reluctant to let us back in. Noah fished the rusted key out of his pocket and jammed it into the lock. The door swung open with a soft, reluctant creak. The inside smelled like dust and wood smoke and rain-soaked memories. Everything looked exactly as we'd left it, the old leather couch sinking in the middle, the cracked lamp on the side table, the faded family photos still crooked on the walls. I shivered and told myself it was just the damp air. Noah dropped his bag by the door and kicked off his boots. "Home sweet home," he said, voice dripping sarcasm. But there was something brittle underneath it. Something almost nervous. We moved through the house together without speaking, our footsteps muffled on the threadbare rugs. In the kitchen, I ran my fingers over the chipped tile countertops, the sticky layer of dust. In the hallway, I paused by the narrow staircase that led up to the bedrooms. The second floor was darker, colder. The shadows seemed deeper there, like the house was holding its breath. I turned away quickly. In the living room, Noah had sprawled across the couch, flipping lazily through a photo album he'd pulled from the bookshelf. He smirked when he found a picture of us, barefoot, sunburned, maybe 8 years old, wrestling in the dirt behind the cabin. "You used to cry when I pinned you," he teased, tossing the album onto the coffee table. I rolled my eyes, but my face burned. It wasn't the memory of the wrestling that got to me. It was the memory of what came after, the way he would hold me too long, too close, even when the game was over. The way I never wanted him to let go. A gust of wind rattled the windows then, sharp, insistent. I jumped. Noah looked up, eyebrows raised. "Nervous much?" I tried to laugh it off, but the sound stuck in my throat. Out of the corner of my eye, through the misted-up window, I thought I saw someone, standing just beyond the edge of the woods. Still watching. But when I blinked, it was gone. If it had ever been there at all. Noah didn't seem to notice. He was already flipping through another old photo, this one of the two of us curled up together in the same bed, fast asleep. Too old to be sharing a bed. Old enough for it to feel wrong. He stared at it a little too long before snapping the album shut. The sound cracked through the heavy silence like a gunshot. Neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain started again, harder this time, drowning out the world in a steady, relentless drumbeat. And for the first time since we arrived, I wondered if coming back here had been a mistake. A huge, irreversible mistake.